I would say a special thank you to Miss Smith for not stressing Melody out, because when you stress her out, you actually stress me out.
I already sent her an email today thanking her as well, Mayor.
Glad to help.
So that's good. All right, so we'll see if, Brian said this is perfect. All right, this is easy.
Here we go.
All right, so before we get started, and I didn't come up with a cartoon, by the way. I said, Mr. Jones, you were going to make him mad before we got started. As far as our budget, this is our, well, for some of us, we've been doing this quite a while. But I will say, this is a very short presentation that we give, but that's not indicative of the amount of time and energy that's placed in the budget. So I want to thank Melody and Robert and Amy. I don't think Amy's here tonight. I know she came in and helped. And then JJ. There's been a lot of hours put into this. And for the general public, if they watch this and see it, they'll think, well, that took about maybe 10 minutes. But as you know, the real work has already taken place, and then we'll ask this to go to finance so it can be scrutinized further. Hopefully, Mr. Jones, as chairman of finance, you'll be very pleased with it. And honestly, hopefully, y'all won't have to spend a lot of time on the budget as far as each line item. At the end of the presentation, you'll be given the hard copies. So we've got a history there of every single line item that we have in the city, and a detailed analysis, and then, of course, what I am proposing. We'll have reasons that we can back that up, and then, of course, the final decision will be yours. But I do take a great deal of pride in the budget. I think it's probably, as mayor, it's probably one of the single most important things that I do. Not only because it gives us a guideline and kind of sets the agenda for the upcoming year, but it helps us in our day-to-day operation and assessment of where we are in the city. So we'll start. It's just a fund balance, an accumulation of our revenues over our expenditures. I'm not going to read through all of these. Again, it's very specific once you get into the budget. But our general fund, unassigned, a little over $11 million. Our general fund that's committed and assigned and non-spendable, if you notice, Melody's got some notes over here on the side. That note A includes a reserve for our economic uncertainty of almost $11 million, $1 million in reserve for risk management, and 1.2 that was assigned to our fiscal 15-16 budget, but will not be we won't have to. It won't have to be utilized. A little over $6 million in capital, 4.6 million in debt service fund, 4.2 million reduction due to the purchase of the Mason Corporation property, and was reimbursed by our bond proceeds in 16 and 17. A little over 4 million in special revenue funds. So our operating results dating back to 2012, if you see, you notice that we've had surpluses every single year leading up to this present year, and I have no reason to believe that we won't end the year with a surplus again. That's something I expect. It's really something I demand. Now, there's also some notes here, so if you take the numbers that are on the notes and add to the actual numbers, you'll see that what we would have really ended up with had we not done some other things. For example, transferring money out for bonuses, transferring money out into capital projects. So it's, for example, 2016, we finished with a little over 400,000. And that's considering that was after we had transferred $375,000 out from bonuses, and another $700,000 out to our capital projects fund. Excuse me one second. Oh, no, I'm kidding.
Don't do that.
I'm just messing with you.
Mayor, that's a good sign, come on.
But in 2015, we had Note B, a little over 200, almost 300,000 in 15, but again, another 375,000 for bonuses. $1 million that year we transferred to capital. Our capital is something that we need to work on. It's grossly unfunded. And so we struggle with that particular part of the budget. It hasn't got us in trouble yet, but it is something that we need to look at moving forward. Our cash balance on hand, now this is as of June 30th, a little over $12 million in our general fund, $7 million in general public fund investment. Talks about our 7-cent gas tax, 4 and 5, almost $12 million in debt service, almost $3 million in capital, escrow, insurance, E911, corrections, jails, our general obligation. You see it there with a little over 105. Judicial control account. If you look up under the control account, Mel's got a little note there. That's cash distributed to our general fund, Board of Education, and debt service. That was after June 30th of 17, totaling a little over 160. So as far as our highlights are concerned, our new 1% sales tax revenue, that is budgeted into our general fund, but then part of its expense to be transferred to debt service fund in order to pay the increased debt on 16 bond issue due in March and September of each year. This particular budget for this year, we have payroll that's budgeted with a 2% COLA for our employees, our merits, and no increase in the SEIB premiums without requiring any use of carryover fund balance. And that's something I'm really excited about. Really going back to, I'd made myself some notes, but that was the one thing that sometimes gives council, and me too, for heartburn. Even when I proposed the use of fund balance, not one time since 2008 have we ever used that. But in 2008 and 9, really my first year as mayor was the first time that I proposed that we had no use of fund balance. In 12 and 13, again, y'all added a little bit to it, and we ended up about 146,000 over. So I'm really pleased this year to be able to offer a COLA to our employees and to continue all the benefits that we do without having to use a carryover fund balance to help pay for it. Now, this is important, and I do this every year. You will not see in the budget where I'm proposing or where I've put in a number for employee bonuses. But my deal has always been with employees is if you help me have a surplus, then I'm confident that the council will consider a one-time bonus at the end of the year. So we're actually getting ready to start to do that for this fiscal year. And it looks like, from what I've just shown, it looks about like 375,000 has been what we've done in previous years, but that's going to depend on exactly where we finish this year. Another thing that's really beneficial to our city is when our employees participate in our wellness screening, because it helps us on our costs. So for due to the employees coming and participating, we've been able to keep our best rating of preferred for that. Total budgeted revenues for the upcoming year just north of 50 million. Again, I have zero budgeted for fund balance, and our total expenditures, again, just north of 50 million. Melody's put a note here. It just says, for the first time in several years, it balances on its own without needing to utilize a carryover fund balance as a revenue source. Our capital projects highlights for the upcoming year: we'll continue funding for the I-65 diverging diamond interchange. We have requested, and I have every reason to believe, that ALDOT will expedite that process. So I don't think that project is as far out in the future as we had originally believed it would be. It's important to us, obviously, but we have reason to believe it's important to ALDOT and to the governor as well. So we have that funded. We're going to continue funding our the West Homewood Park, pool construction, new public safety center, and our Board of Education construction projects, all budgeted in Fund 26 from our 2016 bond proceeds. We'll continue paving our streets from money that's approved to be transferred to Capital Projects Fund from our debt services in the amount of $2.3 million. So we still plan on paving streets, and we're planning on continuing our funding of our Greenway Phase 2 construction. Another one I think y'all will be excited about is to move forward with the construction of our 18th Street project. So this year's budget is going to include the first phases of that, which is the engineering section. So that is in the budget. And then, of course, as always, our sidewalks. We think that's important. So all of those things are I have budgeted for capital projects, and would like to see y'all carry those forward. So the way all this has worked, basically Melody's kind of outlined it here, but the department heads basically have given us a wish list, and they met with Melody and JJ and Robert and pleaded their best cases for that, for everything they believed that their department needed. After that, they presented the budget to me, and then I reduced it by another $2.3 million. So by doing that, that's really what gets us to our, I think, our ability to get this 2% COLA by unfunding, cutting out some things. One thing, too, I think will be important to you. It's kind of a small amount, but there were some positions after retirement that I just didn't fund again. Deputy Chief Copus, one of them, and that was about $108,000 in a salary. But I have added to the budget a part-time code enforcement person to help. I really believe, I think if we get the right person and add some extra time and emphasis on that part of our city, hopefully you won't see as many things coming before you as a council. So I do have that in there if you choose to see fit to pass it in the final version of the budget when it comes back to the council. This is just a budget summary of all the funds. Again, I just hate to sit here and read them out because you're going to be looking at them for the next month. We'll also get this up on the city's website, too. So the total of all of our funds is just over $128 million. So So our Board of Education, during the 17-18 budget, the Board of Education's budgeted to receive revenues from the city of Homewood as follows. 8.1 million from sales tax, and another 8.3 million basically from property tax. So about $16.5 million they should, if things go as planned, they should be able to receive. So again, why don't, instead of us handing it out now, we'll just wait till the meeting is over. Make sure you can get you a copy before you leave. Mr. Chairman, I'm sure you'll start considering when you want to start finance meeting. We'll be able to, of course, we'll be there to answer any questions. But I do, we put a little note here at the very bottom, and it just says, beware of little expenses because a small leak can sink great ships. And every year I ask you, and you've always been cooperative, but I'm going to ask you again because this is a tight budget this year, that we just don't nickel and dime ourselves to death. It's okay sometimes to say no. You proved tonight that you can do that. And sometimes, whether it's it doesn't really matter what it is, but if it's not budgeted, let's just take a long, hard look before we approve and start adding on to budgets. It's going to happen. There will be some things that come up, but I'd rather it be the exception than the rule. So I think I'm pleased to be able to give the budget to you. I think y'all are going to be impressed with it, and I know you'll appreciate the amount of work that's gone into it, especially from the accounting finance department, because I wouldn't attempt to do this without them, but they really do a good job. So now we'll, Melody, you can go home and rest tonight. I'm going to cut my phone off. But thank you, Mr. President and Council, for your time, for allowing us to present the budget. We look forward to working, answering any questions you have in finance, and hopefully we can get this done in a pretty quick manner.